I think what we'll do is we'll kick away. I know it looks like Denise there is frozen again, but hopefully Denise will pop back in at some point. So, but we've only got half an hour. It is dead on 12:30. So this is the point at which everybody's allowed to get their lunch out. Please do eat anything that you've got. This is a lunch and learn. So for anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Karen Kirk. I work in what is today the CLIC team, the Cumbria Learning and Improvement Collaborative. You may have noticed that got a slight background change, and that's in recognition of the fact that us as a learning collaborative will absolutely continue, but we will have a bit of a name change going on. We were just having a discussion this morning about whether we got t-shirts to go with our new name, but we'll have to see if we've got the budget. So we will be called Boost at some point in the next few weeks, probably around about September time. So if you stop seeing CLIC and you start seeing Boost, don't worry, it's still us. And we will continue with our lunch and learn. So here we are at our lunch and learn. Really excited today just to go back and revisit some of the key learnings from what was, and I know some of you were there and I know some of you weren't there, from our day back in May, which was LOC in the Lakes. That was a culmination of lots of people coming together to pull together our theme for this year, which was around community powered change. So let's crack on. So just a couple of quick bits of housekeeping. So this is what our lunch and learn is about. Because it's a real quick fire half an hour. There is a bit of tell to start with, but hopefully I won't talk too much, and we'll have a little bit at the end for interaction. But also you can add to the chat as well. We've got Amy and Ashley supporting as well, that hopefully we'll be able to pick up the chat as we go along. If there's anything, just jump in, Amy or Ashley, if you want me to answer anything. So you can keep your cameras on or off, it's completely up to you, but I won't open up to questions until we get to the end. And all of the links for the things that I'm going to talk about today, especially for those of you that weren't at LOC, are on the CLIC website. So let's kick away then. So what's the context for what we're talking about today, and also the LOC in the Lakes conference that we did this year? So I really do feel that North Cumbria has got a good, strong history of working with communities. We can always do things better, but there are I wouldn't want you to think that none of this existed until CLIC came along and did a conference on working together and community-powered change. So there's an acknowledgement there of building on the really good work that we do in North Cumbria and beyond around working with communities. And we know that communities and the people that are at the heart of our services are the best people to, and our best place to do those things around understanding what our needs are and what could be improved. And I've just flashed up there the really dull NHS North East and North Cumbria logo, but it's just to that acknowledgement piece again of the fact that we are now, whether we like it or not, part of a bigger system. And so us as employees in CLIC of the North East and North Cumbria ICB are now increasingly saying, how can we join up? Let's continue to do this work at place and at neighbourhood level, and work with the partners that we've come to know and love in North Cumbria, but we're also starting to spread that out much more so across the North East, our big integrated care patch, so that we've got that learning, that rich learning across the whole patch. And you will notice, if you can remember back to May, those of you that were there, that in terms of still thinking about the context for LOC, this was a slide that Cormac Russell flashed up for us around where is our focus, where is the system's focus at the moment when it comes to health and care. And I just felt that this was quite a strong visual around the fact that, where we place our resources at the moment, and as opposed to where we should be placing our resources and where we would love to place our resources in terms of what makes us healthy, and that prevention rather than cure approach, to put it simply. So it's all to play for. And there's just a visual of our northeast and North Cumbria patch. I think it's absolutely important to say that, you know, in our area, and I'm talking about the northeast and North Cumbria and the northeast, we've got some of the, you know, rated some of the highest health and care services around in the country. But also we've got some of the poorest outcomes as well, which I know that, you know, so many of you will know that already. And just for a couple of examples, 8 out of 10 local authorities in the UK with the highest rates of child poverty are in the northeast and Cumbria in general. Higher proportion of people living in the 20% most deprived areas than the national average as well. So, and we know that, and we know, especially in North Cumbria, where our challenging areas are, we've got real pockets of affluence right next to pockets of deprivation, and where there are some real health inequalities. This is a bit of a busy slide, but and all of this stuff is on the CLIC website. But what we can't do in such a short amount of time is talk about all of the brilliant participation and the brilliant people that came and talked to LOC. We had 3 keynote speakers and we had 15 workshops where people had an opportunity to attend 3 of those workshops, and that's just given you a quick flash up of some of the local contributions that we had at LOC. But all of that is on our CLIC website if you want to have a look. But what was so heartwarming for us was that it wasn't hard this year. It wasn't hard to pull together people and say, come and help us deliver something that's going to be really meaningful in terms of community powered change. People were bashing our door down to come and be involved, and we could have had more workshops. So I think that in itself is telling us something about where we're at as a region. And in terms of our aims for LOC this year, I mean, obviously, I don't need to read those out. You can see them there. But I want to pick up that last point, which is deliberately controversial around learning from the experts. And when I say experts, this was a real turnaround for us. And for the first year ever, and I think even more so than the previous year when we talked about health inequalities, we didn't want to be health led. We wanted to be as inclusive as possible. And I think we did a good job of getting us as far towards us being more of a collaborative of people who work and are citizens and do community work in health and care in North Cumbria. I wanted to flash this up because everything about working together generally and working with communities is relational. And there was a real deliberate effort on everybody's part to do this thing called authentic engagement. And we deliberately tried not to be hierarchical. We tried not to have the system in front of the stuff that we were talking about at LOC. And we know from the feedback that we got that actually creating safe spaces for people just to talk about what they could contribute to community powered change had really started to happen as part of the LOC conference. And that's obviously something that we want to carry on. So I want to talk about what really came through in terms of the key messages. Now, these are key messages for me, but also they were key messages in terms of the feedback that we got from people on the day. What was the buzz? What was the things that people said, I'm going to take that and I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to use it? So Cormac Russell was our first keynote speaker. He talked about, he calls himself a social explorer. He's worked all over the world on community projects, and he talks about this Capri model. And I know this Capri model has been picked up in our integrated care communities already. I've been there when collaboratives have started to talk about it. And so what he talked about was well-being through the lens of this thing called asset-based community development, and pulled out these 5 areas. For us to be able to do that, it has to be citizen-led. There's another slide just in a few minutes' time around actually when we think we're co-producing or we're creating health and care interventions, we think we're being citizen-led, but are we really? He talked about being asset-based, and that can be tricky sometimes when there is a lot of deprivation, there are a lot of problems. We've got data to show us that in certain communities there are problems, but actually, we need to do it from an asset-based approach, and certainly in terms of the people, and the people are the key assets in each of those neighbourhoods. anything that you can do closer to home in terms of community-based change is going to be helpful. And so that's a contradiction to what I said at the start, which was we're now on a bigger platform. We're talking about the Northeast and North Cumbria. But the challenge for us is to say, how can we work at a regional level and share our learning, but actually still go back and do the work as locally as possible? And so you guys that are here today, I know, so many of you are involved with that type of work. Relationships are everything, and we'll come on to that in a sec and talk a little bit more about relationships. And that thing about, the hard to reach people, when we talk about inclusion focused, this isn't about hard to reach people. It's about us not trying hard enough, and whoever us is, to actually go out there and say, let's involve, let's have people left, right at the forefront of these changes, who are actually have lived experience, who are involved, who live in these neighbourhoods, who have experienced, health and care deprivation. Oops, excuse me, just went one too many slides. And I just wanted to pull up another slide from Cormac talking about assets. And because, it kind of is a bit of a management word, isn't it? Assets. So what do we mean by assets that contribute to the well-being of a community? And these are the things that he pulled out. And I won't talk about all of them because, again, you can read them there. But, assets are very specific to places. So, in your local places, actually, where are the connections and associations? Who are the anchor organisations? Who and what are the drivers in local areas in terms of assets? And it could just be about local people that just know loads of stuff and are involved with loads of stuff, or they've been involved with stuff in the past. What are the stories? What's the culture? How is that different? And we know that's different, especially in North Cumbria. North Cumbria doesn't have the same culture across its whole patch. And who else can you get involved? Another contributor we had to LOC was a lady called Olivia Butterworth. Prior to her coming to LOC, she was head of patient and service user participation for NHS England. So she was the patient and service user voice for NHS England. Interestingly, she'd taken voluntary redundancy before she came along and still contributed to our conference. So that kind of gave her, I suppose, almost a little bit more free rein to talk really openly and honestly about her experiences of what she believes gets in the way of us true community powered change. And she talked a lot about power and power imbalance. Interestingly as well, one of the first things she asked a question and said, how many years have the NHS been mandated to involve patients and service users in service changes? And that's been mandated since 1972. We would think it was a new thing, but it's not a new thing. And yeah, so to talk to that power imbalance, that Arnstein's ladder of public participation is at the bottom there, and hopefully you can see it. I'm interested, and I know we don't have time for a lot of collaboration in this short lunch and learn, for you to reflect and think about when you, as practitioners in your areas of practice, have been involved with co-creating and co-producing, where have you been on the ladder and where have you thought you've been? So there is that bit at the bottom, which is the doing too. But what I'm really interested in is, in terms of food for thought for you, is to thinking about actually to what degree are we nearer to the top of the ladder, which is where we are really empowering, we're really partnering with people, we're delegating out power. People other than the NHS or the council are actually leading on pieces of work, as opposed to engagement. And it says there, this isn't my language, it's the language of the model degrees of tokenism, which is to say, okay, here's something we prepared earlier, let's go out and talk to our service users and find out what they think, which is better than nothing. But that's not true engagement, that's not co-creating, that's not community powered change, that's something different. So we'll leave that one with you to think about. And Olivia talked as well about, there's a lot of language around this kind of done to, done for, and how can we move closer to that doing with, like as equals. I wanted to also highlight our last keynote speaker of the day, who was a guy called Dave Hyam. I know some of you will have worked and will know Dave prior to LOC. He founded an organisation called The Well, which is a not-for-profit community interest company. It's been going around about 10 years. David told a really compelling story. He's an ex-offender. He's a former drug addict. He was in and out of prison for the majority of his life until I think he was 38. He talked about how typically people don't get out of that, that system, having been in that system for so long, but he did. And he told a really compelling story about the conditions he believes are needed for people to be able to recover from things like that. And he's got bases in all over in Barrow, Morecambe, Lancaster, and I think he's got sites in Kendal and Fleetwood, and more so in North Cumbria as we go along. Most of what they do is about helping people recover from drug and alcohol addiction. And everybody, without fail, who works for The Well has lived experience, is a former addict. So these are the things that Dave talked about, and I would really recommend his book. And this, I'm not on any kind of commission here, so it's called Rat Hell to Rat Pack, and actually that the Rat Hell story in itself is a really interesting story. And if you look on the CLIC website, you'll see his keynote, and he talks about that around creating conditions and this experimental conditions with rats around how they reacted and responded to things. But he talked about these 6 areas, these 6 core conditions for recovery. And initially, that was, in his view, the core conditions for recovery around drug and alcohol addiction. But actually, if you think about community recovery and actually creating the right conditions in a neighbourhood, in places where people live, it all translates, all of the same applies. So he talks about lived experience, and like I say, everyone who works at The Well is a recovering addict, but the power of lived experience and how important that really is. And authentic connection in order to feel safe. He talked about how he saw everybody as a threat throughout his life, and so that made it really hard then for him to have safety to be able to recover. And so to be able to build safe connections in any of our interventions and the work that we do is really important. And how do we help people to find meaning and purpose, and enabling people to find meaning and purpose through a sense of belonging and enhancing their well-being is important to our work as well. Community obviously is all of the stuff that we're talking about today. We've become consumers and clients, not citizens and neighbours, is what he talked about. And how do you go back to that sense of community where everybody is equal? And also, how do you create a trauma-safe environment where we consciously create a safe and non-judgmental environment, and we could promote a culture of mutual respect and actual unconditional positive regard, is what he talked about. He talked about the Carl Rogers stuff, evidence-based for that. If we think about our work in terms of, because some of you might be thinking, well, what's that got to do with the work that I might do around service transformation? The art of hosting is so important in terms of how we bring people together and listen to people and create a space for people to be able to be really honest about what's going on for them in their experiences, that we can then draw on and work together to come up with better solutions for people. And then that last one, hope, there, the belief that people can change and have it within themselves to change, which goes back to the unconditional positive regard piece again. And I just wanted to flash that one up because that was a slide that that Dave used, and just sort of leave that one there with you. And for me, in my day job, but also especially in the work that I did around LOC, I think that the key thing still that I held on to and hold on to and take from it is that relationships are everything. So much feedback we got was around building connections, to do things differently, and how we go about building those relationships is really, really important. And I'm really happy to say that we're still partnering with the University of Cumbria, the Cumbria Development Education Centre, around an art of hosting approach to how we work with communities. Um, uh, for those of you that haven't heard of the art of hosting, if you just Google, because I don't think I've got that on the link at the end, but if you just Google the art of hosting, the website will come up around actually how do we actually this thing called slow activism, how do we actually work with communities in a way which we just don't turn up in an awkward way and say, tell us everything you know. We actually partner and we create safe spaces for people to work alongside us to create and do things differently. And so hopefully we, through working with the University of Cumbria, we're going to bring some funding into North Cumbria to be able to help people like us that are here today learn more about an art of hosting approach, so that we can be as absolutely effective as possible in bringing people forward and working with people to make change. So that's a big thing that's happened. And again, we haven't got enough time today to talk about some of the feedback that we've had around the connections that people made, but we will be putting a paper out to show that evaluation and that feedback. There's the connection with the integrated care communities, and that continues. And I know the ICCs, like I say, have pulled out that Cormac Russell Capri model and are starting to use that, and are starting to really reference the stuff we talked about at LOC in terms of how that informs how they work with their local communities. And of course, we've got things like Cumberland Council and the community panels that are being developed, something similar for Westmoreland and Furness, and all the other work we've got around bringing third sector partners together. And I know, Claire, you're with us today. I don't know if you're in a position in a sec to talk about some of the stuff that you emailed to me earlier in the week around funding and things. So there's loads and loads of stuff continuing to happen. But in terms of us in CLIC, as conveners of this work, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to pull it all together and just to sort of offer it back out to people, especially for those of you that missed LOC, and this is just a massive whistle-stop tour of some of the key messages that came from LOC, is that what we want to do is we want to continue this stuff. We've been lucky enough to have people come to us and say, can you help us convene? Can you help us facilitate some of the community work that we're doing? We want that to continue, so please still use us as a hub for that, and to be able to connect you up to resources and to other people to be able to continue to do this type of work. That's just a connection to lots of the things that we talked about today, and you can look at, and I really would recommend you look at some of the keynotes if you don't look at anything else, to really embed some of the things that I've mentioned to you today. But what we've also got, that second big long link there, is a link to our website and our training offer around working with communities. We've got 4 modules around working with communities and community powered change. They're short 2-hour virtual workshops that are open to anybody who work and or volunteer in health and care. We've still got a few places left on some of those programs if you're interested to have a look and you want to learn more. So that's just a quick plug for that. So what I want to do now is, I haven't done too bad, it's 5:02, is just stop sharing, stop presenting, hope that you're all still there. And just in the last 5 minutes, open up to the group. If anybody wants to give any quick reflections on what LOC has meant to them, any work that any of you have done since you've been involved with LOC, or anything else that contributes to this kind of social movement around us saying, let's keep doing this stuff and let's keep connected. Who'd like to contribute? Having a quick look in the chat as well. Or to give views on LOC. We're always open to feedback as well.
I would just like to say, Karen, I found LOC very inspirational. I thought the keynote speech from Cormac was particularly thought-provoking. The stuff that sticks out to me was this thing about we tend to look at things a mile wide and an inch deep when we need to look a mile deep and an inch wide. So yeah, it was very, very thought-provoking. The role of needs assessments, where what's assessed is that people need what it is you're wanting to provide them with, was particularly thought-provoking. And since I think I'm glad you put up Arnstein's ladder of participation, and I think there definitely is a role for information and consultation, and I don't knock it, but I've reflected very heavily since as a resident of Workington, and the working GP consultation was the worst type of consultation because it was manipulation for the outcome that was going to happen anyway, rather than consultation that was meaningful. So I think it's when we do consultation, it has to be genuine, it has to be meaningful, and it has to be options or thought through or ability to amend or tweak in some way rather than be complete manipulation. So I think those days have to be gone.
Yeah, really good points, Gordon. Thank you. And thank you for being involved with the focus group for the Working with Communities training programme. So, you know, we're well on our way to launching that now. So that's brilliant. Any other thoughts? So we've just got a couple of minutes left, so please do put any ideas or thoughts, or if you want to connect with us, into the chat. If you've got any other ideas, not just for this subject matter around community powered change, but this forum, this kind of short lunch and learn forum, is an opportunity for you to be able to push out you know, success stories and any shared learning, and we cover all sorts of different weird and wonderful subjects. So if there's anything that you'd like to get partner with us to do in terms of a lunch and learn, we don't generally deliver, it's partners that deliver, so it just happens to be me today. So please let us know about that. And also there's Amy's just popped into the chat, there's some link for feedback as well, if you could give us feedback. So thank you so much, everybody, for turning up today. We will watch this space for the next LOC in the Lakes. We are hopeful that we will continue to be able to host LOC in the Lakes, because it would be a bit daft if we didn't and we moved it to the northeast. So and we're working with the Academic Health Science Network, who are our sponsors for this, lobbying them to get money for us to be able to run another conference next year. So, and if anybody wants to be involved with that or wants to think about some of the content for that, then, you know, again, always really happy to partner with you to listen and to hear about that. So we'll leave it there then. Hope you've had an enjoyable lunch, half an hour, and hopefully see you all again.